of the world to come. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. As we're gathered here on this All Saints Sunday, we have stories of life in God and life in particular in God's work through Jesus. There's the souls of the righteous are in the hands of God in wisdom. Jesus calls Lazarus forth and directs those around him to unbind Lazarus. Today in Revelation, it's the end of time, that place we look toward for when all things have been made well. As we hear in Revelation, the reign of God, begun in Jesus' incarnation, moves from close at hand, which you've been hearing all summer, moves from the already not yet, breaking in, to it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Many of us are rightly skeptical, nervous, or at least skittish about the book of Revelation, particularly as it's used to warn queer folk like me about lakes of fire, or used to divine the exact day and time of Jesus' return, despite Jesus' own direction that no one but the Father knows that. Or as the book of Revelation is used to cast politicians as the Antichrist. However, I love Revelation. It's like if Rodgers and Hammerstein, Stephen Sondheim, and Andrew Lloyd Webber took a crack at reading a synthesis of the Gospels in the most dramatic way possible. More cats, less Godspell. In a dream sequence. In her book, Baptized in Tear Gas, the Reverend L. Dowd writes, "The stories in the Hebrew Bible and in the New Testament tell us something about the way God works and who God is. God brings forth life in pure resistance to empires that wage death. And the way that God brings forth those hope children says something too." Dowd's term, hope children, is a great way to think about the big S saints we celebrate today and pray for the little s saints we hold close in our hearts. When John is writing Revelation, he's imprisoned on the island of Patmos. Christianity is being persecuted. It's not the state religion of the Roman Empire. In this 80s musical drama of the gospel, John writes, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them as their God. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things has passed away." John has grown up hearing about what Dowd calls hope children. As he's grown up learning the stories of the Hebrew Scriptures, those stories that we hear at the Easter Vigil, God's history of salvation. He or those close to him who have formed him in following Jesus walked with Jesus. John knows the hope brought by the ultimate hope child, Jesus, the hope of the Christian story, that Christ is risen from the dead, trampling down death by death, and to those in the tombs bestowing life. He sees this in his vision. Death is no more. The New Jerusalem comes from heaven, and the whole of the earth hasn't been obliterated. It's been renewed and restored. Heaven comes to earth. God's being is among mortals again, and God says, "See, I am making all things new." See, I am making all things new. All Saints' Day was begun as a feast to remember all the martyrs, hope children who'd followed Jesus and lost their lives for it. It expanded to celebrate those whose discipleship was so deep that they stand as spiritual examples for the faithful. All Souls, now what our prayer book calls All Faithful Departed, grew to remember everyone who had died, everyone whose deaths had brought tears to our eyes, tears we need God to wipe away. In the Reformation, All Souls was suppressed, and the New Testament understanding that all the baptized are saints through God's grace was pushed on to all saints. The English and their descendants revolted. What we're doing today is a mashup of All Saints and All Souls. It is well and good to celebrate all the big S saints, saints from history whose lives inspire us. We can believe that all the baptized are saints. That is our prayer book Christian historic theology. Fine. Still, though, we have a pull to remember, to pray, to hope for that guy from our high school class who died in our car crash, or that family friend who taught for decades, or that work colleague who will never be in lesser feasts and fasts. All the theology of being made saints in baptism, facing a watery death and the grave, is solid. We resist raising those folks we knew to the level of big S saint. They're folks like us, saved by God's grace, but who still cussed a little or had some other fault. They're hope children too, but not as perfect as we idealize the saints to be. The big S saints who were full of problems when you read their histories and hagiographies. So in this mashup of All Saints and All Souls, the church wants to reiterate what we believe. Embracing grace is hard, but Jesus has taken care of that little bit of cussing and much bigger things. As we celebrate All Saints, the church reminds us that this isn't the end, that death as we know it is not the end. In Surprised by Hope, N.T. Wright writes, "Death is the last weapon of the tyrant. And the point of the resurrection, despite much misunderstanding, is that death has been defeated. Resurrection is not the redescription of death, it is its overthrow. And with that, the overthrow of those whose power depends on it." Neither the U.S. Code nor the liturgical calendar consider the Tuesday first following the Monday 1st of November, when saying when we vote or celebrate All Saints' Day in conjunction with each other. We're all anxious. We're all fatigued. English and Canadian friends don't understand how we make it 2 years compared to their 6-week election cycles. Yesterday, friends were posting a meme that said, "Next week has been exhausting." The texts we have today, though, from Wisdom, Revelation, the Psalm, and John, the Gospel, encourage us to keep hope. Regardless of what happens on Tuesday, whether our preferred candidate wins or loses, neither Kamala Harris, nor Donald Trump, nor Jill Stein, nor Cornel West, nor Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will wipe every tear from the eye of the morning. And undoubtedly, there will be tears on Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. Whether you're celebrating, though, or grieving, the church is here today, using the witness of the saints who've gone before, big S and little s, that it is God through Jesus who is making all things new, not whoever heads the American empire. However this week goes, we, as Christians, look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come.